So what we mentioned, it's about destabilization with these countries. Western corporations, this is in Latin America, right, can extract all their minerals, especially these rare minerals that are needed for the fourth industrial revolution, lithium, cobalt, nickel, for pennies on the dollar. It's also about putting them on the monetary system, making sure they stay on the monetary system. Every single time I go to Latin America, Matt, I can use my dollar everywhere, and that's by design. They want to make sure they're dependent on our monetary system because it's the only way to prop it up. And it's very scary now for a lot of these people in America because, you know, the Saudis have decided they're going to sell and buy oil in yuan, I believe, which is not the petrodollar anymore. That's very scary because that's the only thing that was really holding our dollar up. But what are your thoughts on this? They also want the example, and thank you so much, Dingo Ate Me Baby. They also don't want the example of a successful and sovereign socialist country succeeding. And I also want you to go and bleed into, is China really a communist country too as well? Give us your thoughts on that.
Yeah, you asked some good questions, man.
I've been studying. I've been doing my homework, baby. I'm ready. I'm ready to rock and roll. You know, when I go do this debate, you know, if we turning into a communist country, I want to do well for you. I want to do well for Don DeBar. I want to do well for the people who have really, you know, motivated and taught me. And Matt, I've said this so many times before, like, you know, what scares me more than anything, I'm not an ideologue. There are people out there who are ideologues. I know a lot of people I do work with. They're all attached to the ideology. Oh, it's got to be communism. It's got to be Engels. It's got to be their Trotsky, whatnot. They believe in the system. I always believe that there's a group of men or women, whatever you want to say, oligarchs, globalists that sit above every single system right now. You know, China and Russia are more about the nationalist system and doing what's right for their people than America, right? So, I mean, I want people to understand that it's not so much about the idealism, right? It's about who controls and who has the mechanisms of power. I mean, America has become a censorship nation. We are censored up and down. We've become a fascist nation. You know, we're not becoming a communist country. We're becoming a fascist country. We're being completely controlled by corporations. So, I mean, I just want you to explain, because you've explained better than anybody. This is why so many populist right people would get pissed off at Matt Ehret, because he would dispel their bullshit and rumors. But please, is it about you think the United States and the Western elites, they don't want a socialist country to thrive, because then their people might get some, you know, some bad ideas in their mind. And is China really a communist country anyways?
Yeah, the way I would tend to approach that is that the entire discussion around, are you a commie or are you a capitalist? You know, are you jet, are you a shock? It's kind of like a false framing that we've been sort of conditioned to fall prey to and play that game that was shaped by the Cold War, which, you know, before the Cold War, that wasn't really the core fight. It was, are you for freedom and nationalism, or are you for empire? Are you for slavery, or are you for freedom? Like, those were more, I can get my mind around that a lot better, you know? And from that standpoint, you've got two expressions of capitalism historically, and two expressions of the thing called, very, like, lazy people will oversimplify to stupidity. You know, Einstein said, you know, when asked, like, how do you express your complex ideas? He says, well, I try to express them as simply as possible, but never simpler. And that's an important piece of advice, because there's nuance, you know, and you do want to look for the simple principle, but not go dumb, not lobotomize into nominalism. And we got these false definitions we're told to fit ourselves into regarding what we think capitalism is, which is like, is that always been a good thing? It's like, well, the British Empire controlled the world through the British East India Company, a private entity utilizing the cover of capitalism and free trade in order to rape and pillage and maintain a global system of enslavement, controlling 25% of the world population under controlled famines, Malthusian population reduction strategies, forever wars. That was the way things were run from the 18th and 19th century up until the 20th, and still today. That's globalization, right? So, but that it was done under the veneer of capitalism. So that's actually feudalism with a capitalist surface covering or candy coating, but it's really the essence of that type of thing is feudalism. And then you have examples of like people who call themselves capitalists, but they believe in entrepreneurialism. They believe in having some sort of a moral set of values animating the behavior of investments, of what are you creating for the future? Are you improving the freedom of the individual and the society as a whole? And from that standpoint, you got the John F. Kennedys, you got the Lincolns and the Greenbacks, you got a very different idea of capitalism, which is much healthier, which tends to find harmony with people who call themselves socialists, but they don't all agree on the same thing, right? Some people are feudal socialists, like the Fabians. The Fabian Society is a bunch of misanthropic eugenicists around H.G. Wells and Bertrand Russell and Lord Maynard Keynes and others who believed that, you know, we should weaponize the poor and disenchanted masses and use the veneer of socialism to get more controls for an unelected grouping of scientific managers to control population and reduce the population to some equilibrium. That's the feudal socialists, just like you have feudal capitalists. And then you have people who call themselves socialists who actually despise empire. They actually care about people, and they want to use whatever they can pragmatically in terms of whatever they read from Marx, whatever they leave or whatever they keep. And they will use that part that works to solve a problem as far as a pragmatic way of thinking. And there you have the pro-industrial, pro-growth socialists who will tend to also fight Nazis, right? Like a lot of the people, 89% of the burden of fighting the Nazis that were being funded by Wall Street in the city of London during World War II and before that was carried by the socialist Russians, the socialist Chinese, who lost 28 million people, 11 million people in China died, sacrificed to stop the Japanese Anglo-American funded, you know, fascist entity that would have been the basis of a one world government of eugenics had they not made that sacrifice. We made sacrifices too, but again, that was a different idea. Are we going to say thus, you know, but socialism and fascism are the same thing. And so it's all, we can't learn any lessons about that is sort of the simplification that we tend to get. Or a lot of the leaders of South America who were overthrown by the CIA, like Salvador Allende. There were people who were willing to die to save their people from the rapaciousness of the World Bank and the empire. And they were overthrown and murdered because they didn't fit the bill. And fascists run by Nazis were put into their place, who were responded to the Pentagon that was killing JFK. So, you know, you've got this nuance that people need to get their mind around, but there's a lot of, like I said, hypnotic inductions built up over decades of Cold War propaganda that's been just sort of awoken again. And we've been profiled and played. And like you said, the Democrats have been played to hate the Russians and think that the Russians are the cause of all of their boogeyman problems. And the people who identify a little bit more with conservative values have been played to think that the Chinese are the cause of all of their problems. Both cases, they overlook the fact that the thing that actually killed JFK, that ran 9/11, that killed Bobby Kennedy, that killed Lincoln, that whole fifth column thing that's been built up and baked into our society as the oligarchy, this deep state thing, is not what we're looking at.
In the house, right? Like what was it when a stranger calls? The call is coming from inside the house. Right? It's like, what? You know, you think he's outside. No, the call is coming from inside the house.